Welcome back, investors. TPG Investing here, and welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about a company called HITIF. This is a company that I've previously covered, and if you follow my channel you've probably seen the previous video. If you don't already know about HITIF, then I suggest that you watch the video first. It's quite short, only about 8 or 9 minutes. It should be appearing in the top right hand corner about now, so take a look at that video and then come back to this one. Now, a lot has gone on with this company over the past few weeks, and I felt the time was right to make a new video. So in the last video we covered in detail a number of things such as who the company are, what they did, their brands, the management team, some technical analysis, and we went through their financials. Now we're going to look at some recent events right up until today and the opening of their 80th store. Before we get into the video, if you like the content, it would be greatly appreciated if you smash that like button. The last HITIF video got over 150 likes. That not only shows me that you want to see more content like this, but it also greatly helps the channel, which is vital for a small channel like this. So we're aiming for another 150 likes on this video. Can we make it happen? Subscribe to the channel if you're new and hit that bell notification so you never miss one of my videos that could potentially make you money. Make sure you watch the entire video and don't enter into any stock blindly without viewing all the information on offer. And at the end, leave a comment down below. I'm interested to hear what you think of the company. I want to point out that I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. At the time of my last video, I did not hold a position in HITIF. Since then, I have bought some shares and I hold a small position with a view to increasing it in the coming weeks and months. Now, let's get into it. So who are HITIF? If you're watching this video, then chances are you already know who HITIF are, and that's what brought you here. So I won't talk too much about who they are and what they do. I'm just going to give a quick overview for anybody that doesn't already know. HITIF was founded in 2009. It operates in the cannabis industry with over a decade of experience as a leading enterprise operating across Canada, Europe and the United States. Their portfolio of companies include a dominant Canadian cannabis retail chain, a global manufacturer and distributor of cutting-edge smoking accessories, and the largest accessories e-commerce platform in the world. Their portfolio of cannabis retail brands includes Canna Cabana, Grass City, Kush Bar, CBD City, New Leaf Cannabis, Valiant Distribution, Meta Cannabis Company, and Famous Brands. Their GrassCity.com e-commerce platform alone is frequented by over 20 million consumers a year as the highest traffic and most visible brand in the industry. In my last video we spoke about how much HITIF had expanded and grown rapidly, adding new stores and acquisitions regularly. At the time of that video, barely 2 weeks ago, the company had expanded its retail business up to 75 stores. As of only yesterday, HITIF announced that its new Canna Cabana retail store had begun selling recreational cannabis products for adult use. The new store represents HITIF's 80th branded retail location across Canada, selling recreational cannabis products and consumption accessories, and the company's 8th new organically built store in the month of March alone. The new Burlington store is strategically located within a popular commercial plaza with a major grocery anchor and several national restaurant chains nearby. CEO Raj Grover stated, "The new store is another step towards our commitment of reaching 30 branded retail locations within Ontario by September of this year. I am so proud of the work of our team has put into launching 8 new stores this month alone." March has been the busiest month in terms of new store openings since HITIF's inception. Continued expansion in Canada's largest province remains a core part of HITIF's organic growth strategy. We will continue to execute this strategy by bringing our one-stop cannabis shop concept to high traffic areas like the new Upper Middle store in Burlington. Only the previous day, HITIF announced that its new Canna Cabana retail stores, located in the affluent Silverado neighbourhood and in Calgary's Shaughnessy neighbourhood, had begun selling recreational cannabis products for adult use. These new stores represent HITIF's 78th and 79th branded retail locations across Canada, selling recreational cannabis products and consumption accessories. The Silverado store, the first cannabis retail store within the neighbourhood, is situated in a popular retail plaza anchored by major grocery chain, while the Shaughnessy location is in a power centre alongside major national retail brands. So that's 3 new stores in 2 days. On March 19th, HITIF opened its first cannabis retail store in Canmore, Alberta, and appointed a new chief operating officer. We'll speak more about that in a moment. This opening represents HITIF's 77th retail location. Located 1 hour west of Calgary and only 5 minutes behind the Banff National Park, the new Canmore store is strategically located within walking distance of several ski resorts and other tourist attractions. Let's go back for a moment. Let's look at where these stores are located, all strategically located. The Shaughnessy store is in a power centre alongside major national retail brands. The Silverado store is situated in a popular retail plaza anchored by major grocery chains. And the Burlington store is strategically located within a popular commercial plaza with a major grocery anchor and several national restaurant chains nearby. And also, since my last video, High Tide expanded their Ontario footprint with the first Canna Cabana retail cannabis store in London. Again, it's strategically located as stated. The City of London is a growing community of over 380,000 people, situated in the heart of southwestern Ontario, and is home to the prominent Western University and Fanshawe College campuses. So let's talk about the team at High Tide. So in the last video I talked about the team at High Tide. I don't want to be going over the same stuff again, as I feel it would make the video unnecessarily long. I hope you guys appreciate that. But there have been some changes to the team. As we mentioned a few moments ago, High Tide have appointed a new Chief Operating Officer, Aman Sood. Aman was previously Senior Director of IT and Operations. He is a seasoned leader with over 2 decades of experience in retail sector projection, project management, operations, technology and cost optimization. He has proven successes in new market identification and strategic positioning for companies of all sizes. Having led the building and management of 25 New Leaf Cannabis retail locations, Mr. Sood is a pioneer in the legal market who specialises in spearheading operational improvements to reduce shrink, enhance productivity, increase sales and drive efficiencies. Immediately following High Tide's acquisition of Meta Growth in 2020, Mr. Sood began to oversee the operations of all High Tide stores while leading a major strategic shift to transform High Tide's information and technology systems to better support a truly global company. As Director of Operations with Meta Growth, Mr. Sood led business development for both New Leaf Cannabis and Meta Growth. During this time, Mr. Sood increased profitability by developing various inventory and cash control measures to reduce shrink by over 90%. But Mr. Sood is not the only new member of the team. Sean Ging has also joined the team as Chief Technical Officer. He oversees all IT and e-commerce initiatives for High Tide globally. Mr. Ging has over a decade of experience with the cannabis industry, having owned and operated a brick-and-mortar accessory store, managed e-commerce growth at Namaste Technologies and founded Smoke Cartel, one of the leading online head shops for consumption accessories in the world. Sean joined High Tide after the company acquired Smoke Cartel, which we will talk about more in a moment. As I said at the start, it has been a busy few weeks for High Tide. Mr. Ging has played an integral part in integrating its proprietary and licensed dropshipping technology across all High Tide e-commerce businesses. He has led innovation in the cannabis e-commerce space and has revolutionized the accessories marketplace with strategic approaches to logistics, capital management, and digital marketing. Sean is also an award-winning creative director in the UI/UX web space and has 10 years experience successfully building startups in the technology and fintech sectors. He brings a passion for building memorable brands, products, and services to help position High Tide for continued success in the digital space. And finally, just one last mention for CEO Raj Grover. Raj has grown High Tide from only one small store of 2 employees in 2009 to what it is today. 80 stores now. That's phenomenal growth, and the plan is to have 115 stores by the end of the year. As usual with OTC companies, there's very little analyst coverage of High Tide. Since my last video, there has been no additional analyst price target set. As we see here, the average price target for High Tide is $1.15 Canadian, with a low target of 90 cents and a high target of 140. As I said in my last video, that high target was set by David Kadekel when he raised his rating from speculative buy to outperform and raised his target from $1.20 to $1.40 per share. This article is from just a few weeks ago and is an interesting read. I'll put a link in the description. On the technical side, we can see here there's been a lot of volatility in the share price in recent months. The share price has risen from its lowest point of about 20 cents back in January to its heights of nearly 90 cents in February and is currently sitting at 67 cents. As we see here, High Tide has been moving in this upward channel for the past several months and has hit a level of support and resistance numerous times. We can also see here the formation of a descending wedge, which can be considered an indicator that an upward move is coming. And as we can see from the chart, that could happen very soon. Quite interestingly, the company's earnings are due to be released after hours on April 6th. This date very closely coincides with the projected endpoint of this wedge. In my last video, I showed a similar graph which was recorded at the time the share price would have been slightly above where the white arrow is now at just 56 cents. That was only 2 weeks ago, and if you had bought on that day and sold earlier this week, you would have made approximately 30% on investment in just 2 weeks. So now let's get back to some more juicy news. The Smoke Cartel acquisition. On Wednesday, High Tide announced that it had completed the acquisition of Smoke Cartel and now operates both the largest and second largest e-commerce platforms for consumption accessories in the world, with a combined total of 33 million site visits in 2020, having already got over 20 million site visits from GrassCity.com. As a result of the acquisition, High Tide has considerably extended its footprint in the United States market and is very enthusiastic about its position to begin online cannabis sales should the United States move forward with federal legalization. Smoke Cartel is one of the leading online retailers of glass water pipes, vaporizers, consumption accessories, and hemp-derived CBD products. The company provides a marketplace with a wide variety of high-quality products, subscription boxes, reliable customer service, and rapid dependable shipping. Smoke Cartel leverages its proprietary marketplace technology to seamlessly connect brands and vendors with its growing customer base built over the last 7 years. Raj Grover stated, "The acquisition of Smoke Cartel is part of our strategy to aggressively pursue M&A targets." Now that the transaction has closed, High Tide will move quickly to take advantage of Smoke Cartel's proprietary and licensable dropshipping technology to enhance all e-commerce businesses and further drive vertical integration across all accessory business lines, while continuing to make progress on the application to list on the Nasdaq. We'll talk more about that in a moment. This deal immediately gives High Tide access to Smoke Cartel's 550,000 customers, driving more sales opportunities and increased profit margin. We will look at Smoke Cartel's financials when we are looking at the High Tide financials. High Tide acquired all of the issued and outstanding shares of Smoke Cartel for $8 million. That comprises of 9.5 million shares at a value of $6 million and $2 million in cash. The fact that 75% of the consideration is made up of High Tide shares is great. From one point of view, it means that High Tide does not have a large cash outlay to make the acquisition, so it won't negatively affect cash flow. And from the other perspective, it shows the belief that Smoke Cartel have in High Tide, the fact that they are willing to take shares of High Tide as opposed to an all-cash transaction. From this acquisition, High Tide is also gaining the expertise of Sean Ging, which we've already spoken about. High Tide announced that it has filed a Form 40F registration statement with the SEC, fulfilling a significant milestone in the process for High Tide to list its common shares on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange. A copy of the 40F is available on the company's website. We were the first cannabis retailer to pursue this prestigious listing on Nasdaq, and we believe it will allow us to greatly expand our shareholder base, enhance shareholder value, and accelerate our already aggressive M&A initiatives in Canada, Europe, and the United States. We are currently in several discussions with potential acquisition targets in these jurisdictions and look forward to updating the market soon, said Mr. Grover. The listing of the company's common shares on the Nasdaq remains subject to the approval of Nasdaq and the satisfaction of all applicable listing and regulatory requirements. High Tide's common shares will continue to trade on the OTCQB under the ticker HITIF until Nasdaq approval and uplisting. High Tide's common shares will continue to trade on the TSXV under the ticker HITI post Nasdaq uplisting. So what does this mean? So straight away we know that High Tide does not satisfy all the criteria to list on the Nasdaq. The problem here is that the current price of 67 cents is below the $3 minimum share price needed to uplist. This is a common problem, but it's also an easily solved problem. So I expect that in the very near future we are likely to see a reverse split. Now I'm going to give a very extreme example in order to illustrate that a reverse split does not affect the shareholder negatively. So for example, if I hold 1 million shares of a company and each share is worth $1, then my shareholding is worth $1 million. If that company did a 1 for 100,000 reverse share split, then I would only hold 10 shares instead of 1 million shares. But now each share would be worth 100,000 as opposed to $1. And therefore my shareholding would still be worth $1 million. So in High Tide's case, I fully expect the company will perform a reverse split. And the positives of this far outweigh any negatives when the company uplists to the Nasdaq. Once on the Nasdaq, High Tide will be far more accessible to investors. Institutional investors are often restricted from investing in foreign stocks or in OTC companies. And for a lot of retail investors, OTC markets are not available at all. Here in Ireland, High Tide is available on Trading 212, but a lot of OTC companies are not, whereas most Nasdaq companies are available on most platforms. There is also the increased possibility that High Tide could be included on any ETFs, such as, for example, the Rise Medical Cannabis and Life Sciences ETF, FLWR. By increasing the amount of potential investors in the company, there is a possibility of an increased level of demand, which should result in share price appreciation under the laws of supply and demand. So let's move on to the financials. Now, I don't want to spend too much time looking at the financials of High Tide, because I did this in the previous video, and the latest earnings report is due next week. So we will look briefly, and then we will look at Smoke Cartel's financial statements. Firstly, when it comes to OTC companies, sometimes there can be a lack of transparency over the company's finances. Sometimes it can be very difficult to obtain accurate data, however that is not the case with High Tide. They are very transparent. And their data is easy to find. Also, it's nice to see that their accounts are audited by the very reputable Ernst & Young. So when we look at the balance sheet for High Tide, we will see total assets of nearly $70 million against total liabilities of nearly $60 million. I would say High Tide have a very healthy balance sheet. As we see here, revenue and gross profit greatly increased from 2019 to 2020. A loss from operations of $20 million in 2019 became a profit from operations of nearly $1 million in 2020. And the total comprehensive loss dropped from $26 million to just $6 million year to year. Overall, the company is in a great position, and the position is getting better each year. So now we will look at Smoke Cartel's balance sheet as at the 30th of September 2020, as this is the most recent financials available. As we see here, total assets for the period equals $609,000. This is a decrease from $1.2 million the previous year. We can see the total liabilities of 2020 sits at $600,000, which is a huge decrease from the previous year's $2.2 million. To put it in perspective, in 2019, Smoke Cartel had a liabilities to assets ratio of 2 to 1. For 2020, that ratio has improved dramatically, sitting slightly more than 1.1. As for the income statement, this is for the 9 months ended September 2020. We can see that they have revenue of over $5 million, which has increased more than 300% year to year, and that the gross profit has also increased more than 300%. Despite the increase in revenue, the operating expenses have stayed pretty much the same. When your operating expenses do not increase in line with revenue, it shows that the company is becoming far more efficient. Again, this is absolutely fantastic. Individual operating expenses that have increased, such as shipping and advertising, are always going to increase with the increase in sales for an online business. Overall, and most critically important, is that Smoke Cartel has turned a $1.4 million loss for 2019 into a $1 million net income. This means the High Tide have not acquired a loss-making company with the intention of making it profitable through shared resources and integration. They have actually acquired a profit-making company that, in my opinion, will only become more profitable as a result of the business combination. This makes the business combination a fantastic deal for High Tide. So guys, that brings us to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please drop a like if you did. It really helps the video get out there to more people. If you've watched all the way through, then fair play. This video is longer than most of my previous videos, but because there is so much going on at High Tide, that was necessary. There's also a few other things that would have taken too long to discuss, but I'll try and include them in the next video. I hope I have shared some information with you that you weren't already aware of, and I hope you found value. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and bell notification. In conclusion, I really like High Tide. I think this company is doing an absolutely amazing job in expanding at the rate they're expanding. The amount of new store openings, 5 in only the past 2 weeks, is incredible, and they are strategically located to offer the best chance of success, which is very important. When you look at the companies that they are acquiring, they're being very smart. These are not loss-making companies. A lot of companies that expand through mergers and acquisitions would be acquiring loss-making companies with the intention of using shared resources and synergies to expand and turn the loss into a profit. However, as we see with Smoke Cartel, they had literally turned the corner from loss into profit. So in effect, High Tide are expanding and increasing profits straight away, which is not always possible, but it's great to see it. I look forward to seeing the earnings report that will be coming in a matter of days now. As always guys, this is just my opinion. If anyone is thinking about buying into this company, I encourage you to do your own research. As I said before, I am not a financial advisor and this is not financial advice. Thanks for watching the video. What are your thoughts on the future of High Tide? Leave a comment down below, I'm interested to hear what you think. Catch you in the next one.